I must tell you that I didn't coin the term menstruation police. It was a term given by Romanians when they lived under Nicolae Ceausescu, when the communist dictator tried to increase Romania's population. So, to increase the population and to strengthen national power, Ceausescu declared that bearing children was a noble and outstanding duty and an expression of patriotism. Every woman under the age of 45 was expected to give birth to at least 5 children. Conversely, the Romanian authorities declare that those who don't bear children are quote unquote traitors to the country. Punishments were imposed on single women over 25. They're supposed to be married before 25, and married couples who didn't have children. Enforcement agents were stationed in offices, factories, schools, and rural areas to strictly monitor women, making sure that they underwent monthly examinations to confirm that they were not using contraceptives. The individuals who enforced these government policies were called menstruation police or menstrual police. And now China is in a much worse population crisis, and menstruation police has returned. So on October 28th, China's State Council issued a notice titled Measures on Accelerating the Improvement of the Childbearing Support Policy System and Promoting the Construction of a Fertility-Friendly Society. So from this, you can tell the Chinese government has panicked over the low population. They turned the formerly birth control offices into birth promotion offices. So the officials went from forcing women to have abortions to now forcing people to have children. Newlyweds around the country have reported getting calls from local officials inquiring about their plan, their family planning status, and if the wife is pregnant. Women, married or single, are getting calls from these officials about their family planning status. The officials who monitor women's pregnancy or home planning status are given a new title called female follow-up officers. So people were shocked to see a screenshot of a Weibo post, of a social media post that reads, Hello everyone, I am the female follow-up officer in your community. Please send the date of your last menstrual period to me via private messages. So with that, the menstruation police have returned. The big brother showing concern for women's menstrual cycles indicates that China's population crisis is extremely serious. I discussed China's population being no more than 800 million in my October, I think it was October 8th live stream. And I released a shorter edited version last week, and it received quite some attention. Some people find it hard to believe that China's population is actually 37 to 50, or can be 37 to 50%, or 500 to 700 million less than the stated 1.4 billion. They challenge my methodology by arguing that one, we can't trust ChatGPT for calculating population, and two, my model or my method didn't factor in mortality rate. So let me address their concerns. First things first, about the accuracy of ChatGPT. Well, I know ChatGPT does make mistakes when doing statistical or mathematical calculations, and I agree that my method is very high level. You can almost say it's a very crude approach to population analysis. However, the point of my analysis is that it's a comparative study. I apply the same approach to both India and China. If the method is wrong, it would be wrong for both countries. The fact that it generated India's population within 4% of margin of error indicates that the method isn't far off. Now, about the second concern, that is not factoring mortality rate for the two countries. Well, if I included mortality rates in the study, Chinese population would be even smaller. Mortality rates are not going to help explain China's population gap. If anything, China has a much higher mortality rate than India because China experienced the SARS epidemic in 2003 and COVID, which has lasted until now. The government has covered up the real casualties. If anything, China has had much higher unnatural deaths, total cases of unnatural death in the past 30 years than India. So if we do factor in mortality rates, it's not going to help explain the variance. So now to prove my point, to say that China's population is no more than 800 million, I want to share some statistics with you. China reported 9 million new births in 2023, the lowest since the CCP established its regime in 1949. It's even lower than the new birth during the Great Famine. So between 1959 and 1991, China experienced a massive famine that resulted in the starvation death of at least 36 million people, leading to a precipitous decline in birth numbers. And during these 3 years, the annual births in China were 16.35 million, 14 million, and 9.49 million, respectively. In other words, the number of births in 2023 was even lower than the lowest birth rate that China ever had under the CCP in 1961 during the Great Famine. And it's worth noting that China's population in 1961 was only 660 million, and the official population in 2023 is supposedly 1.4 billion. So how was it possible that the Chinese had more babies during the Great Famine when its population was less than half of what it has now? Also in 2018, a topic concerning China's population went viral on Russian social media and online platforms. A Russian website called Peekaboo published an article titled "China is Deceiving with Population Data," which a Russian expert by the name of Viktor Makov, who stated that research on China's grain production and import-export data led to the shocking conclusion, which is that China's population could not possibly be the nearly 1.5 billion. He noted that in 1945, during the nationalist rule, China's population was 490 million. After the Communist Party implemented the Great Leap Forward, which resulted in the Great Famine, and then the Cultural Revolution, which caused countless deaths and injuries, followed by the one-child policy, 3 decades of one-child policy, which lasted from 1978 to 2015. So the Russian author asked, how could China's population surge to nearly 1.5 billion in the 3 decades? He found the claim to be implausible. So he said that by comparing China's grain import-export data with its population growth trends, it became clear to him that the actual population is far less than the official number, and it's likely 800 million or even 500 million. Other Russian media reported that they added up the publicly available population data or figures of China's cities, and they came up with a total of only 280 million urban population. And based on the traditional urban-rural population ratio of 1:1, China's actual population should be around 500 million. Even let's say the rural population is higher, even though it's not 50-50, even though it's, let's say, 60-40, they argue that China's total population should not exceed 800 million. And on the Russian website, OK.ru, videos of online commentators suggested that China has long realized that the deterrent power of a massive population outweighs that of guns and cannons. So deliberately exaggerating its population carries strategic significance for the CCP. The above story was reported by Radio Free Asia in January 2018. I also took a look at the micro level. So in one county of Gansu province, it was actually the largest county by geographical area in Gansu. It's called Subei County. It made national headlines this year when the county only had, on average, 5 newborns every month. The county had a population of 12,000 people, but on average, it has less than 5 newborns every month. So that makes them the total newborns in the county to be under 60. So I went to Baidu and started looking at the population trend. What I found was that in the 1990s, the county's population was close to 15,000, and it went down to 11,800 in 2023. There's a 22% decline. In the media reports, they say that the county's population normally is around 15,000, and now it's a little under 12,000. And then they had this 15,000 population as far back as in the 1990s. So what this tells us is that in one county, total population didn't grow since the 1990s, but instead it shrunk by 22%. So that suggests that China's total population probably didn't grow from the 1990s because China's population was 1.1 billion in 1990. I don't think it ever grew to 1.4 billion. China started the one-child policy in 1978. And 15 years later, 15 to 20 years later, it started to see dramatic population decline. So it never reached the 1.4 billion. Now, with pandemic casualties, I stand by my claim that China's population is below 800 million. So one day when the truth reveals itself, I hope you remember today's session with Lei when we discuss that China's population is no more than 800 million.